US President Trump recently issued an ultimatum to Iran only to suspend it 5 days later. This erratic behavior from the Oval Office is sending global markets into turmoil and is inadvertently granting significant advantages to China. Erratic and few actions highlight US President Trump's strategic difficulties in the current conflict with Iran more clearly than this abruptly halted ultimatum. Originally, by early Tuesday morning Washington time, Iran faced a critical choice: either open the vital Strait of Hormuz for shipping or face US attacks on central Iranian power plants, destroying its energy supply network. An escalation appeared certain if the Mullah regime refused to be intimidated. Iran's resistance was an unforeseen development from President Trump's viewpoint. The mullahs retaliated, threatening to target the energy infrastructure of Gulf states allied with President Trump if their power plants were attacked. They publicized a list of 11 crucial facilities as a warning. Such widespread attacks would collapse tourism, damage exports, ruin the region's image, and endanger livelihoods. What began as a limited strike risked engulfing the entire region. However, just hours before the ultimatum's expiration, US President Trump declared on Truth Social that attacks would be delayed for 5 days due to peace, good, and productive discussions. Iran vehemently denies any talks, claiming its bold counter-threat forced President Trump to back down, marking a clear victory for Tehran. This latest twist, in a conflict now in its fourth week, suggests President Trump may not have fully grasped the lessons from the initial phases. Many observers believe he did not anticipate significant Iranian opposition, perhaps expecting a swift regime change in Tehran. Since late February, the United States and Israel have launched attacks against Iran, targeting key figures. Yet, the Iranian regime remains resilient. Tehran has tried to draw Gulf states into the conflict by striking energy infrastructure and American military bases and by launching rockets towards Israel. And the situation is further complicated by President Trump's often inconsistent social media posts, which sometimes demand Iran's complete surrender and at other times declare the war almost over, even as more US troops deploy. Political scientist Thomas Yeager explains these posts are not the result of detailed security briefings. Military officials present options, while President Trump often improvises his public statements. President Trump's assertion that he was unaware of the risks of Iranian attacks on Gulf states or a closure of the Strait of Hormuz is, according to Yeager, unfounded. As early as 1980, then U.S. President Jimmy Carter's doctrine designated the Middle East as an American sphere of influence due to an oil crisis. Carter declared any attack on the Persian Gulf would be repelled by all necessary means, including military force. Yeager stresses that the United States has closely monitored the Strait of Hormuz for 47 years. All U.S. presidents before President Trump hesitated to launch military strikes against Iran precisely because they understood the profound threat to this vital waterway. The idea that this was not discussed in the Oval Office is, for Yeager, unthinkable. It isn't a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, crucial for vast amounts of oil and liquid natural gas, would profoundly disrupt the global economy. Exporting nations will feel the full impact soon. Yeager predicts soaring container prices and significantly higher logistics costs. Ships are already delivering cargo late, and vessels now waiting outside the strait carry urgently expected goods. This could push production and transport costs to unsustainable levels. President Trump's actions are severing global supply chains, undermining the very globalization the United States itself spearheaded. Moreover, these actions inadvertently grant a crucial advantage to America's chief rival, China. Beijing possesses substantial self-sufficiency, with domestic coal power plants, extensive wind and solar installations, and oil reserves far exceeding those of the entire Western world combined. China's industry can withstand a Hormuz blockade for a significant period, unlike the immediate challenges faced by the United States, the Middle East, and Europe. As Anais Yeager aptly puts it, in international conflicts, damage is rarely one-sided. The key question is always, who suffers the greater loss? China currently faces less disruption, is perceived as a more reliable partner, and can enhance its standing in the Gulf region. Meanwhile, the United States is creating significant problems for its allies. Yeager concludes that China is the major beneficiary of this process, which explains Beijing's current silence. From a Chinese perspective, the primary principle is clear. But if your enemy makes a mistake, do not stop him from continuing. What's your take on Trump's erratic Iran ultimatum? Global chaos, China wins. Share your view in the comments. Do you think this will matter in the next news cycle? This video was generated using artificial intelligence.